Another organization has entered the fray as COD New York has announced that they've officially added both Zuma and Temp to their team. Zuma being announced the day before, followed up by Temp not long ago. By the time of this recording, was just announced to be joining the team there as well. Now, this is an interesting duo, kind of paired together. Obviously, never done before, but one that has been rumored now for a bit. It's not really too much of a surprise for those who have been kind of following the rumors or kind of in the midst of the rumor mill. It's not been too crazy to associate the names of Zuma and Temp along with the New York franchise. And while it is kind of hard to dive into the logistics behind just two confirmed players, I do want to speak on them individually and kind of give a little bit of an idea for what I'm expecting behind both of these guys kind of in tandem together. The first one I do want to talk about is Zuma, right? Because it really is kind of crazy to think about that after 4.5 years, Zuma will no longer be representing FaZe Clan. And there are certain players, and this happens even in regular sports, but in this example, there are certain players that you just associate with a brand. I know that I bring up the NBA more often than not, but I do want to try and derive a few of these comparisons because, like I said, no matter how many changes that have happened after, I always associate the names of like Allen Iverson with the 76ers, Paul Pierce with the Celtics, Steve Nash with the Suns. And for those who have obviously followed the NBA, and even for those who haven't, these are basically players who have made their career off of playing for these particular franchises. And no matter where you think about them, even if they, the future of their career decides to go somewhere else, you always do associate them with their time under these brands. And I do the exact same thing for a few other Call of Duty players, but Zuma, for one, has got to be a guy that you associate more often than not with FaZe. And when I think of Zuma, I instantly imagine the red, right? The FaZe logo. I think about the amount of titles and the history he has had under the organization. Now let's talk about his history, right, with FaZe Clan. 4.5 years, as I mentioned, 4.5 years under the brand. He helped lead FaZe to 4 major championships. He played in 5 different Call of Duty titles, stretching back to Advanced Warfare. He, by definition, has been a part of 67% of FaZe's total major COD titles throughout their entire run as a brand. He's the winningest player under FaZe Clan, most events under FaZe Clan as well, and is, by definition, the longest-running concurrent FaZe professional player in terms of Call of Duty as well. Now, the question after that really kind of comes about, and I've seen a few people kind of even posting this on Reddit and a few Twitter threads as well, have been saying, hey, is he the greatest FaZe player ever? And you have to be careful, right, with this one. It's as this is pretty much solely accomplishments and accolades under FaZe. So is he the greatest player in FaZe Clan's history? And my response would be absolutely. No question about it. And there are some runners-up. Obviously, you can look at a few different names kind of throughout the years. Obviously, names like Attach, Crowder, who's played in multiple positions, even been a coach for the team at certain extents. I mean, guys who have really kind of put it all on the line for the brand. There are a few guys that kind of come to mind. But based off of everything Zuma has done, and during the worst time in FaZe Clan's history, back just last year when they failed to qualify for the Pro League, he was the one that led them out from the depths, right? When they lost Attach, when they lost Crowder, when they lost Priesta, he helped round the roster back to a solid year. He helped work on the young guns in Asim and Selim, and he was the one who helped bring in some incredible EU talent in both Scraps and Zero. And he was the one who stayed with the brand and ultimately put them back on track. No questions asked for me. Zuma, best player in FaZe Clan's history. No question about it. And we'll go and move on because there's really nothing else that you can say after that. It really is kind of a drop mic situation after you think about all the things that he's done. And like I said, a lot of people kind of forget how important Black Ops 4 was for FaZe. I mean, people are already talking about it. And obviously, FaZe will not be existing in the CDL, which is unfortunate. But still, the fact that their run could have ended early, right? Black Ops 4, they may have never seen another championship or even another Call of Duty champs, if you will, if it was not for Zuma's play, not for his performance to kind of be the player for them and to kind of carry on the championships and just kind of the mentality of the old FaZe rosters. If it was not for Zuma, FaZe would have never even existed farther in Call of Duty past their inability to qualify for the Pro League. Now, like I said, we'll go move on. Right now, being paired with Temp, I think that this does allow for a lot of creativity, right, with the lineup. Getting in from FaZe now, obviously, over to the New York franchise. We saw Temp, right, in Black Ops 4 under Splice. Previously to that, he came from an Echo Fox team, which had a lot of shaky moments. Roles were kind of changed up. He and Aqua came from that Echo Fox lineup, went over to Splice, and my biggest thing was that, okay, finally, they have the ability to play their roles. They have their ability to finally do what they really want. And like I said, Temp and the entire Splice roster had a great start to the year, right? They finished third at CWL Las Vegas. They finished second at CWL Fort Worth. Splice seemed to be a sleeper team by a bit of the community, but my worry was that this roster could be a ticking time bomb. I was someone who said, you know what, I like the Splice roster, but I do worry about it lasting. And I had to eat my words for the first few events because they were by far the most consistent team in the entire Pro League, or rather in the entire CWL. So I had to eat my words on that. But at the same time, I also was thinking, how long is it going to last? Right? If they were to see a negative placement, which would later come, just an event later at London where they finished top 12, and they had to later bring in substitutions due to internal and roster movements and never really kind of caught that same momentum they had back originally. But I thought that it wouldn't work because of the personalities that they had on the team, right? And one of those guys happened to be Tim. Now, at the end of the year, right, Splice is kind of looking for somewhat of a carryover, right? They gain a hold of Hook, who was pretty much on loan from Envy at this time, and yet they still only managed to finish top 16 at Champs. However, like I said, everyone knows the skill that Temp can provide. I don't think that anyone would look at Temp's performance, and even someone who maybe isn't a fan of him as a pro player, they all have to admit that he is fantastic. I mean, literally at the beginning of the year, there was no questions asked as to where Temp was in terms of the top player discussion. He was in top 3 guaranteed, and probably could kind of hold on to that title if they maybe would have gained a little more traction kind of toward the middle and the end of the season. He would be guaranteed top 5 most likely if they could have carried on that same progression, because like I said, when you don't really get the chance to kind of spectate players, it's hard to estimate and assume. You talk about winning teams versus teams that are kind of on the lower end of things, so it obviously kind of goes back and forth. But no questions asked, it would have been, not arguably, it would have been guaranteed. However, the big problem that organizations have and do currently, or rather previously, I guess you could say, but have had with him is the attitude, right? I mean, that's no surprise to a lot of people. It's his ability to receive feedback, to give it back, the ability for when things are going a little bit slower, how does he start to respond to that? Is he going to be a good teammate? Is he willing to kind of go forth? And I don't think anyone questions his ability to grind. It's his ability for his attitude during the grind time. And that's what I think I should say that he being picked up by New York is, I think, actually a fantastic kind of pick. I think that that's actually a really good move for them, but I do hope that they also are prepared to put pieces around him to make sure that the mentality and the culture of the team isn't going to be affected negatively, because that can start to happen, right? You can see success, but franchising is a long period discussion. It is a long period investment in which you are hoping that it's not just for a year. You're not hoping for just 2 years. You're hoping for 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, where players, if not just their mentality as a teammate, can help kind of carry on the culture of the roster as time goes on. And I think that could be somewhat of an issue for them. But strictly on paper, I really like the way this looks. I do. I want to see, and I think more pieces need to be confirmed to really give kind of more of a complete outlook on where the team vibe currently sits, or where they kind of maybe stand amongst the others. But I think that on I should say this, based on the rumored roster that New York is coming up with, and obviously based off the confirmed choices that they've got, I think they really do have a fantastic team to work off with. But my big thing is, will Temp be able to do what he feels is best, at the same time while keeping the organization's interest in the front of that? Because we don't know exactly how roster changes are going to work. We don't know how those periods are going to kind of function. You like to imagine things are going to be a lot more strict. You like to think that franchises are going to be a lot more kind of buttoned up when it comes down to those things as well. But like I said, I am interested to see exactly the way that New York will begin to function. But I think, like I said, based on paper, you've got the name of Temp in comparison with Zuma. Those are guys who have had fantastic careers, guys who are still kind of in what I believe to be their prime and can kind of continue on with that as long as the right pieces are kind of put around them. But the way that things are looking right now, I think this is a fantastic way that the New York team has started off their roster.